Everyone knows you should never take a physicist to a sci-fi movie. The same can be said about a biologist and a creature feature. We can point out how certain things are biologically unlikely or downright impossible, but that would be boring. So rather than pointing out what can't happen, why not ask ourselves, what if it was real? So using my super nerd levels of knowledge about biology, physics, and mythical creatures, my friends and I will explore how different creatures could have actually evolved on our planet and what they potentially would look like. Hello, and welcome back to A Real Creature Feature. I'm Mac.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Dean.
Today, we're going to be talking about mermaids.
Now we're going to be talking about the hot kind or the not hot kind.
They're all hot.
It depends on your preference.
Yeah, I'm okay with either one. It just depends on how, we have to deal with childbearing and things like that.
So yeah, we're going to start there. What is a mermaid? Describe them.
Yeah, well, we can go into there's two modes for them.
Mm-hmm.
The original mermaids, as the sailors used to describe them, were half fish, half lady, where the fish part was at the top and the lady part was at the bottom. Yeah, you can
Really?
give me that look that you can't see. That was genuinely what sailors used to describe.
Huh.
Were like very hot butter-faced fish.
Okay.
And they were like, got a fish top, but you know what? They were real hot at the bottom, so I would.
Yeah.
But of course there is the more well-known ones today as the Little Mermaid Ariel style, human parts at the top half and then fist part changes at the waist.
Okay. So, how about you, Dean?
Well, you have your classic mermaid, which either is a monkey top sewn to a taxidermied fish bottom and sold to a future circus tycoon,
P.T. Barnum.
Oh yeah,
Barnum, but not
Barnum and
Bailey.
Bailey.
This is
Barnum
before
and Bailey.
Bailey
Yeah.
got involved.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have that one, or you have the extra traditional sea cows, where where sailors wanted to manatees.
Which that never made sense to me. It was just like clearly they don't look all that human.
Well, Mac, apparently you've never heard the phrase "any port in a storm."
Or the fact that many of them, due to their lack of vitamin C, have very bad eyesight.
Yeah, is that too. Or vitamins in general. I think it's like vitamin A also with the eyes.
I feel like we all learn a little something in these regards because you always tend to give us really weird looks sometimes when we talk about what we know about these things. And then you're just like, here's what we got. And here's why you're so full of crap.
Yeah. There's only one thing that I wanted to make sure we specified was the difference between what a siren is and what a mermaid is. And one of the big things, like, because there are so many different stories of like water creatures, because there's like the Undine, the Rusaka, like all these other ones. Like they are everywhere in like every folklore and culture and everything else. And it like but the main difference between a siren and a mermaid is a siren is actually a half woman, half bird creature.
Yeah.
That sings and lures sailors to their deaths. And yeah, the mermaid is the half fish, half human.
Okay, I know this is going to get off topic immediately. Then what's the difference between a harpy and a siren?
Harpy and a siren. A harpy, I don't think they ever sang or lured.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think they were, but if anything, they'd be, if we were going to go for it in a scientific, they're probably in the same family.
Okay.
If not,
well, one obviously has a beak face with 3 sagging titties.
And harpies also had like metal wings, because that was the story with Hercules. They were able to like depending on which story, they were able to actually like launch these razor sharp feathers at him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That one I didn't know.
Yeah. But yeah, and depending on the story, the
Mm.
mermaids are either very nice and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna help the sailors," or "Hey, we're just gonna drown you because it's fun."
Oh yeah. Well,
Which
I mean, the Peter Pan one is very much there. They will drown you if you get close.
yeah. So let's talk about fish. Because
Mm.
today we will be discussing humans and fish diverged a really long time ago. I mean, like, we diverged from lobed finned fish to tetrapods. And it's like, we haven't really looked back, really,
Well,
compared to
you know.
the fish that we're going to be basically talking about today.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't we? We should have looked back though. We're not like sharks. We have necks. We can do that. Well,
Though, if
maybe
you
when we
ever,
were tetrapods, we couldn't because maybe we didn't have necks as tetrapods.
we still are tetrapods.
I'm a
We have
tetrapod.
four limbs. Tetra. So this is the very simple overview for the separation between how when we divided. Let's go with it. There are vertebrates. Vertebrates then branched off into two different things: things that have jaws and things that don't have jaws. So like a lamprey and everything else like that. They don't have a jaw. At
Hmm.
least I think a lamprey doesn't have a jaw. All
Yeah.
the ones I've ever seen, they're kind of like that big open mouth with a lot of teeth.
Yeah.
And then there's another break off between the bony fish and the cartilaginal fish. So sharks, rays, and all those.
Hmm.
And then the next branch of the bony fish goes from lobe finned fish and ray finned fish. That's the next branch off. And
Yeah.
that's where we're going to talk about the divergence. Like, so I'm not going to say, so our mermaid is going to be our first mermaid because we're going to have a part two. But this
Yeah.
mermaid is going to be based off of if they evolved from the ray finned fish.
Okay.
I'm still gonna talk about a lot of the lobe-finned fish, like, because it was just, like, kinda how it evolved and everything else, and, like, it made
Yeah.
us. And the interesting thing I learned about this was, the lobe-finned fish, like, all the like, where the fin is, it's kinda, like, at one anchor point, which
Yeah.
made it a lot more sturdy and easier to, um, support more weight because there was, like, one point where it can be, build up and everything else. And a ray fin is kind of more spread out. Like if you've seen like a beta fish or anything like that where they had the big flowy
Yeah.
fins. There's like it's nothing really solid for the
Okay.
anything to anchor onto. And then it's a slow build up of it was actually kind of cool. I was watching one of the videos from basically it was just like a general lab thing
Yeah.
or a general like educational book, and they were talking about how lobe-finned fish were actually the more common for a chunk of time, but then the environment started changing, and the lobe fins. Some of them started getting in the lower land, lower, more shallow waters, and starting developing what would eventually become hands and feet and legs. And but then there's a climate change thing that decimated the lobe-finned populations and then we're being outcompeted by the ray fins, which kind of really did push that evolutionary thing of we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta go do this, we gotta actually figure this out because the our resources are getting more finite. So it's the classic arms race analogy where it's like, oh, hey, yeah, here we got to go do something special and do something weird. So then our the ancestors to us, slowly developed these hands or okay, slowly developed legs so that they could slowly get more and more on land. So part of the lobe-finned fish, like I can't remember what of the evolutionary tree, there's also the coelacanth, the lungfish, and then all of us and that was like the lungfish because I'm like they still exist and they're still around
Yeah.
and they don't look like the ray finned fish because of um some of them actually can basically breathe out of water because they have well, rudimentary lungs. They don't
Yeah.
have gills and everything else like the other fish. And then the coelacanth, the one that we thought that was extinct for a very long time, and then we just found it one day randomly in Malaysia or
Yeah.
somewhere in Asia. I was just like, oh, neat, neat. And the thing is huge,
Yeah.
and they're pretty ugly.
Well, I mean, so Yeah, they are. I'll tell you that much. The Wikipedia definitely shows me that they're pretty ugly. Very armored.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those scales look really thick.
Yeah, they do. They are, and and so our basic premise for this mermaid is if it decided to start evolving, a ray fin fish started evolving hands, basically. So the idea with this one is, like I said, with the low fin, they had like that one singular spot
Hmm.
that kind of evolved into, well, our arms and legs and everything else.
Yeah.
But there isn't that same singular spot for a ray finned mermaid. So one of the things that I was thinking about this is because we have very delicate fingers and everything else, but we were limited to how many fingers we had because of how everything evolved.
I mean, it would be even worse if we were cartoons, though. We'd even have
Hmm.
fewer fingers.
Yeah, but if you ever look at like the evolution of hands, like different CT scans of how our bones used to look, and then look at like amphibians and everything else, and some of them have like there are more than actual. This one has one, two, three, four, five, six fingers.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'm like sitting there thinking about that with these ray fish, if they actually evolved some kind of hands or anything like that,
Yeah.
potentially they could have more than five fingers if they get to a certain point, and they would be also really long and bony,
Oh.
and
So
like
alien hands.
yeah, actually, but like even thinner than that, kind of.
Ooh.
So oh, have you ever eaten fish? Duh.
Yeah.
Like when you get a rib
No, we
bone.
live in Wisconsin. No one's ever eaten fish here. Ever.
Ever. But it was like, when
We
you get a
can't
rib.
because all the fish are along the coasts.
Yeah.
There's not a gigantic lake that surrounds our top east border.
Yeah, but think about like when you get bite into and you find like a rib bone or something like
Yep.
that, and just like how long and delicate that is.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, they're also not really needing to support much
Yeah.
from gravity because, hey, they aren't affected by gravity as much. Same reason like why whales can be giant. They're largest species on the planet is a blue whale, and the thing's the largest living vertebrate ever. And
And it's got the smallest throat uh, for a giant animal.
yeah, ratio. And but the interesting thing about that is like, what happens when they beach themselves?
Um.
How do they die?
Wait,
Yeah, they suffocate. The weight is so much that they are suffocated by their own weight, and that's how they die. Because yeah, it's not like they're suffocating from lack of oxygen.
Yeah.
thanks, Free Willy.
So think about King Trident, big muscular guy, and
Yeah.
all this other stuff is like you don't really need like having a strong tail is useful and everything else. But I'm like, what is he bench pressing to
All
get
the
that
anchors
big?
from the ships.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm
He
gonna
doesn't
you.
want them. He doesn't want us humans being stuck in one spot. He wants us to float around.
So he
I.
picks up the anchor
Yeah.
and throws him away.
I'm gonna posit this as far as Little Mermaid goes. The physically larger you are, the more magic you have.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Trident and Ursula, they had the most magic of everyone.
Which interesting thing is in I think what was it the original script?
Yeah.
They were supposed to be siblings,
Yep.
and it's just like
Well, that's
one.
canonical, especially when you get into the musical.
Yeah,
Oh
but it
Lord.
was just like, but one's an octopus and one's a fish.
Yeah.
That's even more separated. That
Yeah.
separation is from vertebra and not vertebrate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Triton is the son of Poseidon, and Poseidon f***ed a lot of different things and
Yeah.
created a lot of different children. Cyclops are
Oh,
technically
100%.
Poseidon's children.
Oh, 100%. But it's more of a are they going off that that's how it worked in Little Mermaid?
Yeah.
They never established who Ariel's grandpa was.
Me.
Eh,
No.
But yeah, I always find that interesting when you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would you? No,
Yeah.
you don't need that. So yeah, like I said, like with the wyverns, is you can have a huge gamut of what these things probably could eventually look like
Mhm.
because the fish don't look all the same, and like deep sea ones could be different and everything else. This is under Mira Grant's pseudonym,
Okay.
and she did a great book. It's called Into the Drowning Deep, and basically she wanted to make a more biologically accurate mermaid.
Ah.
And in there, it was really interesting because she also does love doing, like, oh, what would be the term? I forgot. It just escaped me. Inclusion.
Yeah.
So in there, they have two characters that are twin sisters, and they're both deaf. And it was interesting because then they're positing that the only place a mermaid could still exist is in the Marianas Trench, or
Ooh,
like really deep. And it
metal.
was like, yeah, I was like, "Oh, that's kinda cool." And, like, she posited, like, how something that lives that deep could actually come to the surface, which is actually really, really difficult. Because I was like, if you ever look at the blobfish.
Oh,
So if you
Oh,
ever look.
hold on. I got. Speaking of that, I'm gonna be sending you guys a picture in the chat here.
nice.
Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah.
because as soon as you were talking about the Marianas Trench, and then we were talking about mermaids, there we
Oh,
go.
Oh,
oh, it's in the general chat.
oh, jeez. Yeah. Looking at your picture.
SNL audience,
Yeah.
it's an SNL skit thing
Hello.
where it's some, ugly mermans.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you've got Kate McKinnon plays the. This was recently after a major picture of the blobfish became popular. So
Yeah.
you have Kate McKinnon and Scarlett Johansson as
An anglerfish
anglerfish.
Yeah.
and a fluff. Funny.
Oh, yeah, that is, yeah, a blobfish.
Yeah.
Anglerfish has 2 jaws.
Yeah. Oh, this is
Uh,
ridiculous.
but, so yeah, if you ever look at a picture of the blobfish, there are generally 2 different pictures. There's the
Yeah.
one where you see what a blobfish looks like at the surface, and then that you can see a picture of what it looks like in the deep. And the blobfish, like its name set indicates, looks like a blob when it's at the surface. It's just like, like it sounds like it talk like that. But if you look at a picture from in the under the depth, it has spikes,
Yeah.
and it was
Is
just like,
beautiful.
yeah. And so it was just an interesting because they had basically had the thing in the Into the Drowning Deep that, like, that's how it, like, has, like, this weird lung and different sacs to keep itself from, like, blowing up, basically.
Interesting.
And yeah, it had it, like, with the anglerfish where it had, like, bioluminescent hair
Yeah.
or hair-like appendages and, like, all this other stuff, and because they're in, like, something so down deep that, they have big eyes, but they also use rudimentary sign language, or a rudimentary sign language, because, like, there's it's really probably hard to communicate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to do ASL with those fingers.
Yeah. Well, in there, that's why I was like, they would
Yeah.
have, like, very long, delicate fingers, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh," and I like the fact that she was like, "Oh, yeah, all this other stuff." I didn't like
Yeah.
the fact that they were like, "Yeah," but, like, they still gave them like, this is a spoiler to the book. If you wanna watch it, stop here.
Yeah.
But, all the mermaids that they find are actually male.
Ah.
And it's just interesting because how they have a very simian looking face and a more curvaceous body, which would explain, like, what how they could lure sailors and stuff like that. Blah blah blah. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
This is Mira Grant. You said was the author.
Yes, yeah, Into the Drowning Deep,
Okay.
and it was really interesting because then she goes also into the ecological, um the biome of the creatures that would live on these creatures that live so deep, because like sharks have lampreys and stuff like that, and like, our bodies are covered with trillions inside and outside, with bacteria, and everybody's biome's slightly different.
Yeah.
It's actually really kind of cool. With that is your biome will actually start looking more and more similar to the people that you live with because you guys share it.
Yeah.
Then, same thing with, like, moms and children. So if you're born, via the a vaginal canal, you're getting a bunch of that bacteria and stuff from your mom that helps protect you. And, you don't get that if you get it from a C-section. But luckily, that doesn't really matter as much because as long as the mom holds her child, that biome will still incorporate onto the baby.
Okay. So you're saying that We just need to have the baby and then hermetically seal it immediately for freshness.
Yes, if you want to
Excellent.
have a child that has no natural immunities to the world
Of course
via
I don't.
basically a bacterial force field.
Of course I don't. I
Wink,
need
wink.
my child pure. Pure as the driven snow.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was just really neat, and I really did enjoy. I enjoy all her books, so I can't.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna speak her up too.
Nice.
Now because we also have to address like the difference in physiology between what this particular mermaid would look like compared to the mermaids that we see in stories, see in movies, and hear about in stories.
Yeah.
So Little Mermaid, um, how does her tail look?
Her tail looks like a scaly fishtail.
Yeah.
However, it has the aspects of a
Uh,
mammalian tail.
Yeah. So
beat me
yeah,
to it.
Where it goes
yeah,
for the people who
Yeah.
don't understand, if you look at mammals who live in the sea, their tail goes up and down in relationship to their spine. So if you hold your arm out and your forearm is the spine and your hand you lay flat is the tail, you're moving it up and down. If it was any other sea creature, you would turn your hand and then it would go side to side.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, and since we're having it that it's going to be that it evolved from a ray fin fish that has stayed in the water, it would go its tail would swim side to side.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh, that would be a drastic difference in appearance.
Yeah.
And now here's the thing too that I was like, I want to get your guys' opinion about this one. Would our mermaid be able to turn its head from left to right or up and down?
Oh, well, it depends. On most fish, they don't have the ability to do that because they don't
Mm,
have necks like that. They don't
yeah.
have any sort of bone structure to make those kind of movements.
And that's the thing too, is something that's very, very interesting. So if you let's compare human heads to dog heads or cows or anything, any kind of four-legged creature.
Okay.
Our heads are attached right below our skull. Like from our spine to our skull, it's like right below so that we have it, can balance on our neck bones and our neck muscles. Any other animal that is four-legged, that hole where the spine goes into is further up, more onto like the very back of your head, like where like the edge of a baseball cap, where like the when you adjuster is
Yeah.
kind of like right there. So it was like, and that would be basically what would happen with the same thing with like a fish or anything like that is like we, uh, and then if you look at like a raccoon or anything else that can like go from 2 to 4, that opening is lower than on a dog's, but higher than on humans. So
Okay.
like somewhere in the middle, so that they
Okay.
can go from walking on all fours to standing up with
Okay.
having too much strain. Because it was like, have you ever tried? What happens when you try crawling on all fours for too long?
You get neck pain
Yeah,
because got to try and
you
keep
have,
looking forward. You got to raise up your neck.
you have to keep that
There's a bit.
8 pound. Well, no, the human average was it average human brain is 8 pounds, or is their
Yeah.
head is 8 pounds?
I think if
I
Jerry
believe
Maguire
it's
says
the
8 pounds.
gray matter.
Yeah.
Okay. Y you're still it's a huge amount of weight to have balancing on n not your spine where you're having
Yeah.
to hold it up, it's only being held up by muscle. So I'm
Yeah.
like, "That's a lot of weight." And it's not designed properly to hold it up that way,
Yeah.
unlike a dog or a cow or a horse. So these guys, they never would have had a different kind of, position, and they also a lot of times it's dark and down there, so they have like other sensory mechanisms. What was it? The lateral line. They can like feel vibrations. A lot of fish have that, and they can feel the vibrations through the water and everything else. So they don't really need to see what's happening because it that's would be too slow for them to have to turn their head, turn and look. So I was like, our mermaid would not be the prettiest because they would probably not have much of a neck.
Aw.
And or you I know you've seen the movie, but for the audience, if you ever see the movie Cabin in the Woods by
Oh
Joss
yeah.
Whedon, in there they
Yeah.
have one of the characters. he wants to see a mermaid.
Oh, they're
And
so gross.
and in the very end, yeah, it's very gross, and it's this big ugly thing that did not have a neck, and it was
Yep.
just like, "Brrr."
Yeah.
And it was like,
Oh,
it's not pretty. But I'm like, that
yeah.
would probably be more biologically sound too. Because why are you don't need to look up and down all that much. And depending on like, yeah, like I said, it depending on where the basic environment is, they might not be able to see all that well, period, because it's either it's dirty water, so it's like eyes aren't as important. Like all they really do is indicate like light and no light in many places. Or if they're like really deep, they can't really see anything. Then they use the bioluminescence. Then they have these giant eyes.
Yep.
What was the fish? Oh! There's a particular type of fish that they evolve. Oh, this is actually really kind of cool. Go. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Oh, shoot! No, sorry about that.
Just
It's there is a particular type of fish that is called a deep sea fish. It has a oh, there it is. The barrel eye fish. It has a transparent head.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, and like that's basically the only way it can like look up is it's literally looking up through its skull.
Wow.
They kind of look like a submarine actually, like with a bubble.
Oh.
They're really neat.
Hmm.
And they use that to so they can look up basically and like see the difference, and rather than
Oh,
like needing a neck,
That's crazy.
yeah, they're really cool.
Okay. I'm I just put a picture in the chat.
Audience, yeah, I'd say just look up the
Yeah.
barrel-eyed fish.
Honestly, so
It's-
I'm kind of pushing some of this stuff into the group chat.
yeah.
You could take some of these and I think put them on the Instagram if you wanted to.
Oh yeah, we will, but when this comes out, we'll have to do that.
Put them on the Insta.
Yeah, because I'm
Hey.
also have like a bunch of this stuff too, is because I have like the evolutionary tree.
Yeah. The odd thing about the barrel-eyed fish, just looking at this thing, is how it looks like it has front eyes,
Oh yeah.
like front-facing eyes.
So there is a particular species of fish that it's really kind of cool that they found I can't remember and it was in Mexico. I'm pretty sure it was Mexico. They found them in caves and like they didn't have eyes, like all this other stuff. And then they found they were like, "Oh, and they have like their relatives. They found their relatives." And they're like, "But they have eyes." And the interesting thing is that they're the same species. It's all based off of the environment that they're born into. They will like basically lose all pigment and like not develop eyes. It was just like, oh, that's so there's a trigger in their DNA that causes that to happen because like you don't need eyes in pitch black. You don't need pigment because that's just a waste of materials and like all this other stuff. I was like, oh, that's really, and then like that's really kind of cool that it was like the exact same species that decided, yeah, we're just gonna, have two different evolutionary paths, but still function as the same species so they can
Yeah.
interbreed,
Yeah.
which is weird when you think about it that way. Is like, but then how do you find each other? Life will find a way, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
and,
Look, if Jurassic Park taught us through 6 movies, you can find a way and then run it all the way into the ground.
oh god, I've seen all Jurassic Park movies in the theaters. I saw the original one when I was 6 or 7, like 4 times in theaters. I
Yeah.
loved it. It's it inspired me to do biology and all this
Yeah.
other stuff. But damn it.
And then that's when you realize dinosaurs aren't real.
Well, those dinosaurs aren't real, yeah. But
never real in the first place.
better.
All right, let's get back on topic. Mermaids. Who
Second,
wants to fuck them?
as a weirdo, because it would probably have to develop a better way of birthing where it so with fish what they do is like they do a bunch of eggs and then crop dust the eggs with sperm. So it's low resource,
Yeah.
high yield,
Yeah.
as compared to us, which is high resource, um
Low yield.
low yield.
Yeah.
So like yeah, that's why and and if they, depending on if we want these mermaids to be intelligent, which I'm assuming we are, because I'm like we're actually giving them hands so they can actually manipulate their environment.
Yeah.
That they would have to have at least close to human intelligence. So
Yeah.
that means that their entire system of reproduction would also be probably drastically different. And because of that, maybe their physiology would start looking more like us, where they could turn their heads and everything else. Why do we have whites on our eyes? Or what? Well, okay, that's a dumb question, but what does the whites in our eyes help?
I have no idea on this one.
This is actually really kind of cool because you can notice this in like a difference between a dog and a human and like chimpanzees.
Yeah.
So, where am I looking right now?
Well, you're looking directly at the camera.
Yeah. And you can tell that because of the whites in my
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah.
It allows you to notice like that I'm looking away, looking towards, looking somewhere else, as
Oh.
compared to a dog. Dogs, they don't have the big, I think it's the sclera,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to like really notice if they're actually looking at you, though they also tend to look at where they're pointing their face, so at
Yeah.
least that helps. But yeah, and so like if they actually need to have some kind of society or anything else, their eyes would look probably a lot different.
Yeah.
So that, and maybe they would move forward more so because of oh yeah, fish also don't need to look all that much around that much because their eyes are on the side of their head. So
Yeah.
if they needed to be able to have their eyes more forward, so that they can actually be aware of their environment, having binocular vision, so they could actually look at something properly, then they would have maybe evolve a neck so that
Yeah.
they could actually look. Hey, I'm gonna look at that thing, and then be able to look at their friend or companion or whatever and actually be able to communicate with them in some manner rather than
Yes.
I'm just going to be a weird fish with arms.
Yeah.
And then yeah, maybe they would be more serpentine in appearance too, because so you can in case you can't actually turn your head all that sharp around, like unless they develop like a really long neck, so they could
Yeah.
actually do like a 180, or yeah,
Hmm.
make them that they can do a more serpentine shape, so they could twist at their spine.
So they may end up looking more like the Kaminoans in Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, interesting. The Kaminoans are they'd have made themselves a more aquatic friendly species because
Yeah.
they had when you see them in Star Wars, they're in the middle of like after an ice age,
Oh.
so their entire planet's flooded.
Yeah.
So
Which would make sense, which is why they're constantly dealing with the storms.
yeah, and so they actually they started cloning themselves and genetically engineering themselves to actually fit into that environment.
Interesting.
They artificially evolved themselves to fit better on their home planet.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. And hence why they're so good at cloning, because it actually is
Yeah.
very important for them as a species to survive.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so like, hey, there we go. I went from it's going to be a fish with arms to actually it could be more human in appearance, like shape.
Yeah.
Not saying like it would be like they would have like hips or anything like us, that how we can
Yeah.
perceive them, because like why would they wouldn't need those muscle attachment points?
Yeah.
So more serpent like, yeah. So it could have
Yeah.
like a nice row of ribs that just go all the way down to the end of their tail,
Ooh.
and
Yeah.
then have like long flowing fins, and then having like these more, I don't know. I would, how I would imagine their arms would look would be kind of having like one main well, like the bones and the fins would maybe have like one main arm kind of structure, and then having all that other stuff connected and flowing from it, so that it would look like a pterodactyl, where how it
Yeah.
has like that, but rather than, and then have it like so like a pterodactyl can, yeah, where it wouldn't need to have wings that are like that big, but they could have fins in that sense, where that's what they're using to propel themselves, or not propel themselves, but they use them to guide them, like direct themselves better.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Now
Cool,
you've got
actually.
some new ideas.
Yeah, no, yeah. I love. This is why I'm also like. There's a part of me that I'm like, I should really do better research and everything else in the preparations phases for this. But I'm like, but then that wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have come up
Yeah.
with that idea right in there, or
Well,
we wouldn't have had
yeah.
Dean's Gorgon squirting petrifying juice out of their
Yeah.
eyes idea.
Well, I think it really depends because there is a balance in a lot of this also.
Yeah.
Just because I think in the idea of you giving out research is we would also want to ask questions, which
Yeah.
is what tends to lead to. Because I always think this way when you had described the idea of being serpentine, I was like, well, that always just makes me think of the Kaminoans from Star Wars. Because while they're not like, while they definitely don't, they have that idea of like the long neck and that almost serpentine look to them in a lot of ways.
Which was because I've been listening to a lot of like Star Wars explained videos.
Yeah.
So for like evolution, our how we look is to better fit better in our environment, everything else. But for them, it was that's what their ideal image
Yeah.
is. So imagine if us as a society were able to genetically engineer ourselves to look like a person's like idea of what an ideal human would look like and how weird we'd actually look.
Hmm.
Because
Well,
have you ever seen those
yeah.
filters where they show what your face would look like if it
Yeah.
actually was symmetrical?
Yeah. Oh, no.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah. Not as good looking as people think.
which is and it is interesting because that's also the metric that they use for attractiveness in humans
Yeah.
is like some symmetry.
It's odd.
Yeah,
The one thing is, and I think it's always that idea of like even now, the idea of like what is beautiful or the idea of what's attractive changes. And sometimes it changes from year to year, let alone that used to be on like certain scales. Like
yeah,
back in the 1940s and 50s, the idea of actually being more buxom and like fuller as a human being, without saying fat, but that
yeah.
idea is that was more attractive was to
It
be
was a
more
sign of
full.
wealth.
Yeah. Then heroin chic came around in the, late 80s, early 90s.
And that's actually kind of the reason why I always got really weirded out by speech, like in creatures, that they
Yeah.
were like, yeah, and this is like a creature that mimics humans, and then that's how they get you. But I'm like, but they would have to be on top of what they find attractive.
Yeah.
So, so we've changed. We went from a species that basically looks like how I'm gonna just start it. Like in my head right now, it kind of looks like a beta fish, in
Yeah.
the with the sense of the big flowing fins,
Yep.
like originally, and kind of kept all that flowingness. A nice flowy tail, nice flowy arm, like under,
Mhm.
like I guess I don't know, arm fins, and then a nice. Even then, yeah, because you can also have a flowy head ridge too.
Yeah.
And that's the coolest thing about, like I've said this before, like the cool thing about this concept that we're working with is we're not limited to um one design or one concept, because I'm like
Yeah.
there is no one design for a lot of things. I'm like there's
Yeah.
kind of, so technically there is a one design for humans, and this is actually really kind of cool. So I think it was like
Yeah.
75,000 years ago we almost went extinct,
Yeah.
and
Well,
because of that, our DNA is actually like comparing it to like other species,
mhm.
super duper close, like identical.
Oh yeah. Well, it's
Our genetic drift isn't as obvious
yeah.
as others. So yeah, we went from a kind of weird oblong
Yeah.
shaped fish with fins to a more slender, I don't want to say serpentine because I'm like it just makes people think more but more
Yeah.
humanoid-ish look. So I'm actually really
Yeah.
kind of happy that we explained why maybe mermaids would have necks and why they would have waists and everything else, and like why they would have more forward facing eyes. So maybe, yeah, that whole simian thing kind of makes sense. It's like because so that they can know who they're looking at, so they could actually have some kind of civilization. Because that's the problem too, is like there's no point in having a species that's really smart, like our level of smart,
Mhm.
if they don't have some kind of society. I'm like, tigers are smart,
Yeah.
cats are smart,
Yeah.
but they also don't work together all that much, except
Yeah.
for lions. So I'm
True.
like, they're never going to overtake us because like
Yeah.
we have numbers and a society working for with us. Well,
Mhm.
they just have, well, they have us also trying to defend them too.
Yeah. But would they also, I mean, if they have like our level of intelligence, would they also have to have our same need for that community, because that's a lot of what makes us us,
Yeah.
is that we are social animals in that sense.
I think if we have it that they would need to, in the sense of, so like once again we're going to be going to like how we think like an alien would have to evolve and stuff like that. It's a species that could be advanced and like actually have abilities to communicate and blah blah blah. If you to have a need to communicate, you need to have a group setting. If you are more singular species, then what's the point of communicating? Where all you need is scent markers saying, "Hey, this is my territory." There is
Okay.
no need to transmit ideas other than like super duper simple ones of mine, go away, me bigger.
Makes sense.
So yeah, like if we think about it that way, yeah, then they probably do have to have society. Now, true, they also could be less likely to want to be in big groups, or they could be like, a school of fish where they want to be in giant family groups. So like their society and that'd be a cool take on different creatures and stuff like that is like rather than having them alien in the sense of appearance, having them alien in their society. That it's their family groups are different because that's one of those things that is kind of universal. We all have like these family groups. Like
Mm.
the structure can be different, but the fact that like every culture has them is more or less universal. I think. If I'm wrong, I will admit to it, and I'm like, but I would like to
Yeah.
see cited sources from
Yeah.
audience members.
Yeah. No, and I get that. I know we kind of lost the thread on this, and maybe we'll pick it up on the next one since we are going to be doing a second half of mermaids on this one.
Yeah.
Um, in the idea of will we have to talk about reproduction? Because I can cut this part out if we need to. Would we be talking about like the actual reproduction process potentially?
So the actual reproduction process for these particular mermaids,
Yeah.
maybe there would have to be something more mammalian, more advanced, rather than where they actually have to have some way of one partner, one offspring. But the thing about that is maybe because of that whole the a community group thing too, is maybe because of that, they have a more loose definition of family where there isn't just a father, a mother, blah blah blah. Where it's just like, no, 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 those are the offspring and we are the adults. So
Okay.
all adults take care of all the offspring. And this is actually really interesting. I learned about this recently in ologies. They were talking about this for gorillas. So gorillas, there's generally like one main male, and in groups like that, like throughout the animal kingdom, something that's like I didn't know this, but it's actually really interesting. There's not that much competition for male dominance in that. The How it works is they're defending their harem. Like that's not it's not, that's the sign of dominance is like they're not competing for a mate every year, but they're competing to keep their mate safe from other roaming gorillas. So the interesting thing about that is gorillas have small penises and small testicles by size. I mean, like I think it was like 2 inches size penis, and gorillas are huge. So
Yeah.
proportionally speaking, that's very small. And
Yes.
but because of that, and that's a thing throughout actually a lot of nature is when an animal isn't needing to compete as much, there is the smaller of a penis. So
Oh,
I know this for some whales, they use what is called the blowout thing method, where they try to if one male mates with one other female, and then another male comes along, he will try to blow out the other male's sperm.
interesting.
Yeah. And they also have very long. I think some of them actually have prehensile penises
Okay.
for that particular purpose. So it's like if they have this fish that it's depending on the social structure
Yeah.
or that would be determinant of like how they reproduce.
Okay.
Where maybe they actually do develop some kind of apparatus similar to a penis because I don't think they have penises.
Yeah.
Like I think reptiles like that's when it's you start seeing it. So
Yeah.
it's called like a hemipene, and it's actually really interesting with it was snakes. They kind of have like two, but it's not really. It's more. It's like pronged kind of thing. So it's like actually it's for like helping to hold on into position.
It's like a claw hammer.
Uh, well, more like a pincer.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Yeah, 'cause and it's like really interesting. Is like, oh, that's drastically different than us, and but it's also like because that's just how it worked. And what was it? It was Walking with Dinosaurs years and years ago. It was interesting. I remember watching this, and they had like a sauropod. Yeah, sauropod. Like they're like showing like birthing eggs because they're like there's evidence that a lot of dinosaurs had eggs and they laid them and they put them in these big nests. But it's like a sauropod, they're huge.
Yeah.
So how did they get them down? So they're like, maybe they have this apparatus that kind of just like goes lower and it's like a chute.
Mm.
And like we once again, just like dinosaurs with ears,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be able to know that
Yeah.
because, but they clearly had some way of getting those eggs from that high up down.
Hmm. Well, this almost makes me wonder if, depending on the structure of the egg, because I know with chickens, I know with like chickens and birds, depending on how they work, like eggs are specifically designed to fall from a certain height
Mhm.
into a very specific type of nesting,
Yeah,
and that's what keeps them from breaking.
yeah.
And
But I'm
so,
like, I don't know how, but I'm like, those eggs would have to be very thick and
yeah,
very specializedly
yeah,
designed to not
yeah,
shatter from what 20
yeah,
feet.
yeah. I mean, and I've seen. I mean, but like, I mean, I always think about how thick an ostrich egg is.
Yeah, the largest when an ostrich egg when it's still a single cell is the largest cell on the planet.
Yep.
Largest single cell. It's like that's just interesting when you think about that. It was like,
It averages to about 13 large chicken eggs.
mm,
But still, it was shocking, like, how big those things are.
yeah, I don't
And
doubt it.
yeah, and you had to get out, like, we had to like, you can't just crack open an ostrich egg either. It's thick enough. We actually had to get out a Dremel tool and cut
I was gonna
around
say it.
it. Yeah, so you have to take a Dremel, cut around it so that you get enough of that outer shell off to then break it out.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
nice. And yeah, ostriches can also like squat down, so like it's not even like they
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
worry about the drops.
yeah,
So it's like, well, but they also have to worry about them sitting on it.
yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah, mermaids don't have to worry about that as much though either, because just get in the water.
Yeah. But yeah, 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 they like because yeah, I don't know of many water-based life forms that have like hard-shelled eggs.
No, I think the
So
closest you might get are like shark egg sacs, and there's not even that.
yeah, no, and a lot. I don't know if all sharks do this, but I know a lot of them they hatch inside.
Yes,
So that
There's
it.
there's different ones.
Yeah, it.
There's different ones. Some of them, most eggs are that have that thicker sort of like leather thing, and but some some sharks will lay them, others will keep them inside them, and then you have baby sharks who are born before the others, and they eat the others that are not hatched yet.
Yeah, but you know what they call that leather sac that sharks produce? Mermaid's purse.
nice.
And if you've ever looked at one, it actually kind of does look like that.
Yeah.
It's they're very interesting.
And that would be kind of cool because, like, whenever you look at your early human stuff,
Yeah,
it's not like we haven't done that where
yeah.
we recycle things. Because I'm like, I know of people using what was it? It was the what are raccoon dogs called in Japan?
Tanukis.
Tanukis. They had a real bad. I think they were like endangered for a while because one of the things was it was supposed to be lucky to have a Tanuki coin purse,
Yeah.
Tanuki testicle, not testicle, scrotum sack coin purse.
Oh, good lord.
Because I
Poor.
think there were stories where the Tanuki could do that, and if
Oh
you
yeah.
put one gold coin in, can get two out.
Yep.
And it was just like, no, 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 no. So it would be actually
Yeah.
interesting seeing like this is the main reason why I want there to be aliens out there and stuff like that. I just want to see like the coolest thing would be the development of different art styles and all this other stuff
Mhm.
because I'm like like the closest we have is like Maori and other islander culture, and that would be probably very similar to like these mermaids because of you having used like whale bone and other things that they get from the sea as parts of their art and cultural things. So
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be. But then yeah,
Yeah.
then I also now thinking about like what would their weapon be like because they have to live in an entirely different media. So
Yeah.
I'm like the notion of like using a club probably wouldn't be all that useful,
No.
and you'd have to design a sword in a very and how could you do metalwork
Good
underwater?
point.
I'm
Yeah.
like, you'd use volcanic vents and stuff like that, but that means that you're also working in a environment where the water is that hot.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's like if you could get metal that hot, you couldn't beat it on anything
No.
because then you would move it to somewhere where the water isn't that hot. So all this other stuff would have to be entirely different.
How did Triton get so jacked? He had to spend a lot of time near the volcanoes pounding out a trident.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, maybe yeah. So like if they evolved on Earth, which is the basic premise of all this, their culture would be maybe would be have to be more scavenging like.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
mean,
because I was like eventually if they ever wanted to that would actually be an indicator of like alien species too for us is like we probably wouldn't find any solely aquatic life forms because they could never get off their planet
yeah.
or they would have to come up with a drastically different technology that we have no frame of reference.
All they have, it's a gigantic cylinder that floats over Earth and is upset that we lost our
Oh,
whales to the
oh yeah,
future.
Oh no.
yeah. uh
Uh,
Star Wars 5, Star Trek
Star
5.
Wars 5, Star Trek
Yes,
5.
yeah, Star Trek 5.
I know, some Star Trek movie that's a bunch of crap lousy whales.
Yeah, yeah, which is really cool. And yeah, good point.
There's I think in a lot of that way though, it is in a society like that. I mean, it would definitely be harder because again, so much of what we do on Earth is based around like any weapon would have to be something that could stay essentially would be okay with a large amount of salt and moisture. So you realistically can't do much with metals. You realistically can't do much with wood, and you realistically have at best rock.
Coral,
Yeah.
bone, and rock.
Yeah.
Like because it was like thinking so recently they announced that in Wakanda Forever the main bad guy is going to be Namor.
Yep.
And so Namor, the king of Atlantis, which they changed the name uh from Atlantis to something else, but I can't
Yeah.
remember it off the top of my head. And it's interesting. I think it's like Talgeon or something.
Yeah.
And and if anyone's like mad about it, it was probably marketing purposes
Yeah.
of because they already have um Aquaman as the king of
Yeah.
Atlantis,
Yeah.
which interesting enough, Namor was first.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting because a lot of times Marvel is accused of stealing ideas from DC.
Yeah.
And it's like this is one of those times like nope, 100% was first.
I mean, we're not going to get into this because there's the whole Captain Marvel story that we could get. There's a whole Captain Marvel
Oh,
debacle that we could get into. We ain't
yes.
got time for that.
No, that's an entirely different podcast.
Yeah.
But it was but so that was always an interesting notion with Aquaman and Namor is like they're from Atlantis and
Yeah.
Atlantis sunk and blah blah blah. So then they made it that they could breathe or water and all this other stuff. So there were baseline humans
Yep.
that changed themselves where the Atlanteans in and actually I think both of them are hybrids
Mm,
because
yeah.
in Namor, his mom was human and his dad was human and his mother was Atlantean. Because Atlanteans also have blue skin and
Yep.
wings on their feet, which makes them that they can go through the water fast and also
Yeah.
fly.
Interesting.
But he's also a mutant as well,
Yep.
so
He was
that's
the
why
first mutant.
he's the first mutant. And in Aquaman, it's the same basic story where his mother was Atlantean, and then his father was human.
Yeah.
So, which also would show, and since he's also reproduced, shows that Atlanteans and humans are cross fertile, so they're fairly close together in genetics.
Yeah.
So, but like, and it was always kind of interesting because I'm like, they have these underwater cities more so with Aquaman, where they have these giant open air areas where it's like not full of water.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so I always found that really interesting. I was like, well, why would you do that? Like that
Mm.
just takes a lot of like engineering to be able to do that for
Yeah.
no particular purpose when you can just breathe. In
Yeah.
Atlantis, for Namor, it's been a while since I've seen like when they had because Atlantis was like when I started reading it, Atlantis was more destroyed than anything. It was so like I actually saw it was interesting him watching King Namor holding court and like clearly he's on in underwater
Yeah.
and it was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And it's all dark and dim because he's on the bottom of the ocean and all this other stuff. I was like, oh, this
Yeah.
is kind of cool.
Ah,
And but then yeah, seeing the Atlanteans having like these submarine ships and all this metal stuff and like
yeah.
that, I'm like, I guess to make it that they could make metal stuff, they would have to have some kind of oxygen rich environment.
Yeah.
But then how we are basically designing our mermaids, they wouldn't be all that physically strong for like upper body strength.
Yeah.
So I was like, that would be an issue
Yeah.
because it was
Those-
like they would evolutionarily like the only purpose why we have like arm strength is because we used to walk on all fours, and that's where a lot of the muscle development was.
Yeah.
We have slowly gotten weaker and weaker as a species because we don't walk on all fours.
Oh, how dare you, sir? I'm as
Go fight
strong
a
as.
go fight a chimpanzee.
I don't want to fight a chimpanzee. I want to be friends with a chimpanzee.
Exactly, and there's a reason why.
It'll rip your face off.
I'm.
Yes,
Not,
and easily, not even trying.
I just. I just don't want to fight. Why do we
Yeah,
gotta fight?
yeah.
I
But
just.
you could kick. You'd probably you could kick them in the stomach a lot, and it would hurt them
Yeah.
probably more because I don't think they have as developed abdominal muscles as we do.
Ah.
So that would be like what was it? The when they were attacking Italy during it was either
Yeah.
World War One or World War Two, they had it like when you see it on the maps, they should like there is the underbelly of the wolf,
Yeah.
and that's where they're aiming for.
Oh. Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, because like a dog's abs aren't all that tough either. That's the
True.
soft spot.
Yep. True. I do. I do agree with that.
Because we can walk
Yeah.
upright, we
Yep.
have stronger abs than a lot of creatures.
Nice.
Give and take.
Yep. Cool. So, do we have anything else that we want to say about these particular mermaids at this point?
No, actually, I think we actually because we actually really talked about a lot more than I ever expected to,
Yeah.
and I'm really happy with this.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, like we went with society.
Yeah.
We actually explained why we probably would have something that looks more or less human-like in the sense of like their faces. Like their heads probably would still be like if we were looking like us, would be like upward facing
Okay.
as
Yeah.
compared to it. So like they would always be like swimming
Yeah. Yeah.
horizontally, and they would probably always be more horizontal to each other
Yeah.
rather than where we are like it's like
Yeah.
vertically how
Yeah.
we communicate.
Which would make sense for trying to travel places.
Yeah.
Also, then they can look up and try and pretend to be part of our world.
And
So,
and I even
yeah.
incorporated like a hair-like thing when I was
Yeah.
talking about a beta fish because of like
Yeah.
the flowing fins.
Oh yeah.
So they would I would think they would look pretty,
Yeah.
but not in the sense of like human attractiveness kind of pretty, more of like that's a pretty fish, that's a
Yeah.
beautiful creature
Yeah.
in that sense. Like a waterfall's pretty.
Look.
Just wait until it gives you that come hither look.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this right now. You know, no kink shaming on this one here. You know, we are a
Hey,
look.
we're inclusive.
If the mermaid can consent, I say go
I
for it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
going back to why they have to be jacked and that stuff.
Okay.
Don't forget, according to the Onion's article, dolphins have developed an opposable thumb and are starting to develop their own tools.
Oh no! Oh no!
So they have to contend with that war on the horizon.
Yeah.
Oh boy!
Which that would actually be interesting, like seeing like okay, so this is actually this now that it made me think that you've added that part with the war with other creatures. So this is also really interesting for humans. I think because we talked about this before about our concept of like thinking in three dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
How fish in the ocean have to think in three dimensions. Fish a lot of times in like ponds or rivers, not so much because it's more shallow.
Yeah.
Humans used that we it was interesting because like when we were like first coming out of the water, we went from three dimensions to two dimensions because couldn't get up in trees yet. And
Yeah.
then eventually we evolved into like more simian monkey like things. So up to three dimensions again, and then we came back down to the prairies where we are more two dimensions again. So these creatures that we're establishing are creatures that will be thinking in three dimensions all the time. So like just think about like the structures of a city. Like they probably wouldn't develop many cities that are like in the middle of a field. I get would be the best analogy
Yeah.
because I'm like that just it would be these huge overarching issues. So yeah, maybe they would need to be living in like canyon kind of structures where they can swim into different areas and they just have that little crack up to defend like needing defend.
Yeah.
Because I'm like
Yeah.
the concept of walls also or like city walls also wouldn't be a thing.
Mm-hmm. That
I
makes
was like,
sense.
ooh,
Because
that's interesting.
oh yeah, well that makes sense. I mean, they definitely have more. I mean, for as long as we existed, I mean, we didn't have air travel for, you know, 100
Most
until yeah, for most of this. We've only really developed air. We only developed any sort of like ability to travel through the air in the last 100 years,
yeah.
realistically.
Yeah. So, ooh, okay. But yes, our fans, that's it for our discussion on fish-based mermaids.
So very
I am actually really happy with this one. I hope
nice.
you guys enjoy this. Definitely share this. So next time, we will be discussing the idea of like what happens if like a simian-based species decided to go back into the water and became a mermaid.
Ooh,
Yeah. So that
nice.
one will be possibly looking more like the Little Mermaid in the sense of how their fins are structured, and also that they would look more humanoid,
Eh,
maybe.
get back in the water, you damn dirty ape.
Yes. But yeah.
All right.
So the gigantic reptiles on the earth stand by the coastline with their pitchforks. Get back. Get
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
So until next time, I'm Mac.
I'm Mike.
I'm Dean.
We'll see you next time.
Toots.
Bye.
Bye.
A Real Creature Feature is created by Matt Kuklinski, starring Matt Kuklinski, Michael Seaman, and Dean Snow. Any questions, comments, artwork, or general inquiries can be sent to realcreaturefeature@gmail.com. You can view any submitted fan art and pictures on our Instagram at A Real Creature Feature. Some episodes were recorded weeks in advance due to our current sporadic recording schedule. Any comments left will be seen and addressed at some point, and you will be credited unless you tell us you wish to remain anonymous. If you like the podcast, please leave a review on the podcast app that works best for you. It really helps us out. Also, tell your friends, enemies, and total strangers about the podcast. They might enjoy it too, and that can bring us all closer together.
So there is a thing. It's the levels of civilization.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who came up with it, but as of right now, there are 3 levels of civilization.
Yep.
And it's level 1 is the civilization is able to use all, and it's based off energy requirements.
Yeah.
You're able to use all of the energy on your planet.
Like, so like no entropy gets created on that?
No, no, no. I mean, like you can efficiently use like you can basically use all the sun's rays
Okay.
from our that hit our planet, basically.
Oh, okay.
That amount of energy. So because of that, we are not a type 1 civilization yet.
Oh, good. Good. We can only go up, baby.
Yeah. Interesting. We are getting pretty close to a Type 1 level communication resource, the internet.
Nice. Cool.
Basically, when it hits Type 1 is when everybody on the planet can communicate with anybody.
Neat.
But because of, technology restrictions and government restrictions, that's
Yep.
not true right now.
Yeah.
Now, the sad thing is the scariest, most dangerous part for civilization is when it goes from a Type 0, which we are, to a Type 1.
How so?
Yeah, because that's when it's more of a social and societal issue.
Bitch, no.
Yeah,
I,
it's the fundamentalists,
don't
and all that other stuff.
don't tell me this. I have very little hope left at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Why? Why must you kill all the dreams? All of them. Every
Wha
dream just dead. Just pile of corpses along the way.
Yeah, the moment I learned about that and learned about the whole, the scariest part, I'm like, "Ah, shit. We have to overcome ourselves
Oh yeah,
to,
absolutely. I don't disagree with you on that.
Corpses bobbing in the sea. Ha 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 tee hee hee.
Type 2 civilization is when, a civilization can use all the power of a solar system, basically.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
basically you know what a Dyson sphere is?
I I I I understand the concept of the Dyson sphere. I
That is a
don't.
type
Yeah.
that is a Type 2 technology.
Okay. So
Yeah,
you're
we're
saying that my vacuum is a type 2 technology?
Yeah!
See, see, I don't like the way you said that.
Yeah.
Just let
Uh,
here. You're not taking this dream from me. My type 2 technology needs to be replaced with the new type 2 technology. That's how I know it's not actually a type 2 technology.
if it was a Type 2 technology, technically, I think it would suck your house into it.
I mean, I'm not going to say it hasn't tried.
Yeah. And then Type 3 is a civilization that can use all the energy of a galaxy.
So, like, okay, now see, we have gone completely off topic, but now I have to ask this question. So, does that literally mean like would the civilization have to be galaxy wide to use that energy, or would it be
Basically, yes, it would have to be a
okay?
galaxy wide. No, actually, they wouldn't. They wouldn't be a galaxy. The closest that we've ever seen in like Star Wars is close to us level 3, the Empire.
Okay.
It's not, but it's closer to, and that's like that concept of that you need like just a government or a
Yeah.
civilization that spans the entire galaxy.
Okay.
And then there have been other ones where it's like a Type 4, which has been a new category just because of sci-fi, and that's one that can use all the energy of a universe.
Oof.
So there have been only a handful in science fiction of species that would be considered that a Type 4. Time Lords are a Type 4
Yeah. Oh, look what
because
happened to those guys. They're all creeps.
yeah, they are. Yeah. I'm over 2,000 years old and I'm going to go pick up this chick and have her come
Yeah.
on adventures with me.
Honestly,
As a fan of Doctor
yeah.
Who.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but still, it's I mean, if you allow yourself even a little bit of time, a little creepy.
Yeah.